Welcome back to my channel, Star Booze.
Actually, Elvis thought the song was fantastic. When he and Priscilla were together, possessing their She Is the Nation's Monarch. Loved for her large voice, large heart, and even larger hair. However, Dolly Parton herself has her boundaries. Well known for her generosity and charisma, Dolly hardly ever says anything negative about anybody. Thus, when she once characterized a fellow vocalist as utterly malevolent, the whole music industry was taken aback. Will anyone be worthy of receiving such a terrifying label from the love of America? The answer may surprise you. Soil. The huge screen is a letdown. In a profession for more than 60 years, Dolly Parton has continued to be a light of compassion, charm, and modesty in a field that often thrives on confrontation. She has been commended for more than only her voice, ability to write songs, and commercial acumen, as well as her capacity to retain her. Her heart was open and her head was down. Dolly once stated the key to her lifespan in the spotlight was just remaining calm, particularly when interacting with alongside other individuals in the entertainment world. Others waited in a dirty conflicts and public turmoil. Dolly decided to tranquility. When conflict developed, she would frequently simply take herself out of the circumstance completely. However, even America's belovedest boundaries. In spite of her trademark kindness and diplomacy, someone was able to pull a reaction. From Dolly Parton, so unvarnished and intense that she finally spoke. In addition to, she replied, but she did so in the most words that no one has ever heard her say. Dolly did more than merely characterize this individual, considered harsh, impolite, or challenging. She dialed, they are pure evil. Who is the individual? Then, he succeeded in startling Dolly Parton to her center. And what precisely did they do to merit such a scathing designation? Hold on to observing to learn. However, to actually comprehend why this particular moment was so startling, you must comprehend who it's Dolly Rebecca Parton. Born on January 19, 1946, in a cottage with only one room tucked down on the shores of the Little Pittman Center's Pigeon River, Tennessee. Of the 12, Dolly was the fourth. Kids. Robert Lee Parton, her father, Sr. worked as a sharecropper before operated a small tobacco farm of his own, frequently taking up part-time construction work only to maintain food on the table. Hooray Lee Owens Parton, the mother, gave birth to 12 kids by the time she was 35, her 10th pregnancy, giving birth to twins. In spite of the destitution surrounding them, the music in Parton's home was abundant. Faith and storytelling. Dolly gives credit. Despite her father's business acumen, her mother's Welsh and his lack of reading history for influencing her development as a lady today, we are aware. Her mother's awareness of folk tales and melodies from Appalachia fueled Dolly's early musical interests. Her Jake Owens, a Pentecostal grandfather preacher who made sure service was regularly held a portion of their existence. Dolly also gave her initial public appearances in front of gatherings before she even looked. When she was 7, she made her first handmade guitar. By the age of 8, her uncle had got her a genuine one. Music wasn't only, it was a lifeline, a pastime. Following Sevier County high school graduation, Dolly didn't waste any time in 1964 following her aspirations. The very next, she took a bus to Nashville in the morning, resolved to make it. She had previously had a glimpse of the limelight acting as a kid on nearby TV and radio stations such as The Walker Show on CA. Just 13. Puppy, her debut single, was recorded on a little Louisiana label, Love, and even performed on the grand old she met Johnny Cash at Opry, who urged her to adhere to her instincts. Those intuitions were correct. Dolly first established herself as a songwriter, writing songs alongside her uncle A. Owens, Bill. She composed for musicians such as Hank Williams Jr., Kitty Wells, and landed 2 of Bill's top 10 hits. Phillips. However, when she joined with Monument Documents they pushed her in the direction of bubblegum in 1965, Snap, brushing off her voice as well high-pitched for a rural setting. That was altered. Immediately following her song, Put It Off Until Phillips' Song. Tomorrow, featuring Dolly on harmony, rose to the top of the charts. Her initial Dumb Blonde, a country hit, won the top 25. Fishy closely followed Something. Due behind. Shortly after, she dropped her Hello, I'm Dolly, the debut album, and the rest is history of music. Parton, Dolly didn't merely make it through the industry. Cher imagined it. Jolene to 9 to 5. From Dollywood to her charitable work, she's remained popular throughout several generations. She has consistently refused to feed the gossip mill, declined to retaliate at detractors, and wouldn't allow industry politics drags her down. She is, without query, among the most esteemed figures in the entertainment industry, which makes what transpired was even more startling. Above. During time, Dolly has collaborated with innumerable stars from myths to newbies. She has handled egos, conflict, as well as controversy. However, there's even Dolly was one individual who went too far, couldn't ignore, and who is that individual? Watch this space to discover out. However, let's first bring attention to a romantic tale that has persevered and maintained Dolly's grounding for after all these years. Carl and Dolly Parton Dean Thomas. Dolly Parton is multifaceted at items. An iconic figure in country music, a company entrepreneur, benefactor, and national treasure. Well known for her strength vocals, contagious charisma, and distinctive fashion with rhinestones, she has captivated audiences for many years. However, possibly one of her most durable and underappreciated achievements are the love tale that she discreetly fostered behind scenes with Carl Thomas, her spouse Dean. A man whose name doesn't often make news reports, but whose heart has consistently been the focal point of Dolly's universe. They start dating like a scene from a folk tale from the South. The year was 1964. The scene was a laundry room. In fate, Nashville and Tennessee were around to step in. Dolly, who was 18, had just came to the city with lofty aspirations, with even greater brilliance from her native place, Sevierville. She wasn't yet a household name, merely a young woman with a voice and a bag full of songs that could cause stone to melt. Here comes 21-year-old Carl Dean. He drove by in his pickup. He saw her outside the ambiguous washing machine and, forced by anything, he still unable to explain, halted his, yelled at her from the truck. In actuality, his strategy was audacious, a la Southern flair. However, Dolly wasn't convinced right away. Nevertheless, she asked him to pay her a visit. The following day, while she was watching her nephew. After Carl arrived, he continued to peering. Later, Dolly recalled there was a gleam in her voice as he mentioned each day of that week, and they took a break from the porch, and she refused to even bring him inside. That porch in front, as modest as it would turn into the location where a lifetime of love begins. Days later, Carl had already presented her to his parents. Dolly remembered that, as soon as he saw her, he knew that he was looking for her. It was, undoubtedly, some people spend a lifetime pursuing. No extravagant displays, no whirlwind adventures, just 2 individuals spending time together and area, silently establishing roots in each other people's lives. Their initial official date, a visit to McDonald's. Dolly thought it was a drive-through. Ideal. At one point, she said Carl only would travel to locations where he could be cozy. That grounded, the basis would be simplicity of their union. No glamour from Hollywood, no procession of paparazzi, only personal jokes, genuine conversation, and a bond that developed in the periods of silence in between the headlines. In spite of Dolly's management's demand to postpone marriage because of concern that it might harm her thriving profession, the two listened to their hearts. May 30th, they fled to Ringgold, Georgia in 1966, avoiding the local media in Tennessee. Dolly wearing a plain white outfit that she had sewn. Mother had brought a bunch of carefully chosen flowers. They discovered a tiny Baptist congregation with a preacher who was prepared to, on that day, get married to them. Dolly clarified because she was unable to marry in a courthouse since she would never experience they didn't get married. That, like many others throughout their life, their choice was based on genuineness rather than spectacle. Later that month, Carl went to an industry gala with Dolly, her first significant red carpet appearance. She was being recognized as the BMI Song of the Year in order to postpone till tomorrow. The evening should have been fantastic, but following Carl turned to her at dinner and informed her that he desired everything for her. He was pleased for what she desired, not to invite him to see her, but to once more, one of those damn things. He didn't. From then on, Carl encouraged Dolly's transition from a distance, never chasing attention for himself. He was deeply devoted, but private, not captured on camera, but indisputable in each backstage scene of her existence. Carl was the one exception. When he was featured on her cover, My Blue Ridge Mountain Boy, an album released in 1969, feeling like a tough lumberjack that no have a place in the nostalgia of country music. Then he disappeared once again into the background, in which he felt most comfortable, as Dolly's star soared to the heavens. And Jolene came next. The anthem from 1973 of Jealousy and Sadness is still one of her best-known songs. However, as Dolly subsequently made public, the true tale was Farmer. Light-hearted. One of the local bank tellers had formed a harmless affection for Carl. The quiet passing of Kenny Rogers in March 2020, at the age of 81, the loss was felt throughout the music industry. However, for it was personal, Dolly, she simply tweeted hours following the announcement that you can never tell how much you love someone until they disappear. That she possessed so many amazing years and moments spent with her buddy Kenny. And that, most importantly, she adored him as a musician and achiever, amazing man, and a genuine buddy. She said, God would keep him safe, she said, would adore him, forever. It wasn't merely a companionship, it was a collaboration, a display, and for many, the final. What if country music had a love story? They didn't require a secret or a passionate affair, rendezvous to set the entire world ablaze. The affection was genuine. It simply didn't appear as most people anticipated. Ultimately, Dolly and Kenny demonstrated that not every relationship must be romantic. Occasionally, the strongest relationships are what endure. Right on the brink, where the stress simmers, the camaraderie grows, and the spark never completely dies out. The Individual Pure Evil is a song by vocalist Dolly Parton. The relationship between mentor and mentee Hasselways had a significant impact on the planet. Of imagination, enterprise, and amusement. From academics of antiquity, studying under knowledgeable philosophers to apprentices nowadays. Taking in information from the industry, fantastics, the relationship between there is still a rising star and an experienced mentor. Timeless. And maybe there isn't any such in country music. Relationships have been more well known for being bittersweet than Dolly Parton and Porter Wagner. A dynamic that started out harmoniously, soared to stardom, and came to an end in lawsuits and heartache. It was a story, full of strength, prosperity, and admiration battles, and ultimately a hauntingly lovely farewell. Prior to Dolly Parton become, the lone star who was loved throughout the world for her compositions, voice, and her persona was larger than life, and she was presented to the world not by themselves, but in close proximity to Wagner, a man whose platform and showmanship contributed to the explosion of Here into the national limelight. Born in Porter. Wagner wasn't an overnight sensation in 1927, success as well. He rubbed and scrapped his path into the public eye, obtaining apposition, with hits in the history of country music similar to A Satisfied Mind. However, his true game Porter Wagner was being launched by The Changer, a 1960s television extravaganza beaming into the homes of millions, and country lovers watch it religiously. All around America. In 1967, Parton had released Hello, I'm, her debut album, Dolly. Despite the fact that she had made little singles such as Dumb Blonde and Something Fishy Needs a Boost to her career. Boost. Introducing Wagner, who required a different duet partner following Norma Jean's divergence from his performance. Dolly came on board. The actors and initially encountered a chilly response from devoted audiences, although there was no denying the shine, and when she and Wagner and the group started performing together, there was tremendous chemistry on stage. Soon, fans were enthralled. The Two's The Last Thing on My Mind, the first duet, appeared in the top 10 charts, launching opens the door to a series of prosperous partnerships. Throughout the following several, they produced 13 studio albums over the years, and rose to prominence as one of the most pairs that are easily recognized. But off-stage, not everything was as sunny as the harmonies are recommended. Parton's solo, her efforts were mostly overshadowed. Collaborate with Wagner in spite of her developing ambition and indisputable ability. Although her voice and songwriting, both developed, kept making an impression, the Globe still considered her to be one half of a pair. It wasn't until 1970 when Wagner proposed that she perform a cover of Mule Skinner's Blues solo. A breakthrough started to take shape. The performance was lively, funny, and brave, a demonstration of her entire voice range, even with a little yodeling. The third impact started a chain reaction, response to individual achievement. The Code of Many in 1971, Colors came next, and Jolene in 1973. The latter is a huge hit and a moment in culture that cemented Parton's position in the nation's pantheon myths. Parton was aware of the time by then. Had arrived. Her fame had become too great to stay in the shadow of someone else. She'd outgrown the guide who influenced her profession. It wasn't easy to leave, though. Parton was afraid of Wagner's response. Following all, he had raised her, had faith in made her a star when others didn't recognizable brand. She had to follow, though, her calling. Therefore, in 1974, she informed him she was departing from the performance and their collaboration. To lessen the impact, she provided him with something that will last a long time. Longer than any appearance on television or duet record. I will, she wrote to him, never stop loving you. The song was more than a farewell. It was a letter of love to a professional collaboration, an expression of appreciation encased in tune and recollection. The lyrics were dripping sentimentality, fondness, grief, reverence, and a hint of heartache. Presley, Elvis even desired to capture it on tape, but when his half of the publication was demanded by the manager, Dot writes, but Dolly refused. She decided on her song's purity over the king of rock and roll. That choice ended up to become renowned. The song was the #1 song on the country charts, and after 20 years, Whitney Houston's famous performance made it become a worldwide anthem of loss and love. However, even such an elegant farewell was unable to prevent the end from being resentful. Wagner declined to accept the separation effectively. There were rumors. Was he envious of her achievements? Was he feeling forsaken? Or was it more profound? Numerous people conjectured that his protectiveness suggested love sentiments for Dolly. According to friends and journalists, Wagner had developed feelings for her that went outside of music. Porter was genuinely distraught over losing Dolly, according to one insider, since he genuinely loved her, and I doubt that he had ever loved someone anybody besides himself. However, Dolly always maintained the line. Love existed, but she said it wasn't romantic. There was a type of love. We didn't attempt to conceal the fact that it was as much regard as anything. We were acquainted, shortcomings of others, our strengths, and our hang-ups and our shortcomings. However, working with Wagner had always been turbulent. The collaborative effort heated up, and not necessarily in a positive way. Manner. They were frequently heard by their bandmates. Yelling and fighting behind. The hotel room doors, bickering behind the scenes. Porter and Aishi previously fought like cats and dogs. Admitted. My spouse and I have never Porter and I fought, but all we did was battle. Maybe that fire was a component of why their performances were so captivating. It was unrefined, erratic, and authentic. Additionally, when the personal storm ceased, the thunder of law rolled in. Wagner sued Parton when she departed for violation of the contract in 1979, requesting damages in the millions. The man who formerly supported her now, standing across a courtroom corridor, damaged pride stoking his behavior. The matter was resolved. In private, however, the rift between them expanded into a gorge. In spite of the discomfort, Parton never snapped. In public, she remained elegant and refined at all times, choose to overcome, and ultimately, what scars time could heal, it did. Prior to following Wagner's passing in 2007, the two made make amends. He accompanied her on stage, and they had one last, musical moment together. It might not have been a flawless conclusion, but it was sufficient. Do you believe that Dolly Parton, not hiding the fact that I will always adore you, song was a wise choice, or do you believe otherwise? Tell us what you think. In the remarks section below, remember to subscribe, like, and share. Select the subsequent video that appears.